So among Jeffrey Lundgren's followers, there was one family that just never quite fit in. Dennis Avery was quiet, he was very awkward, but he was intensely devoted. And he had known Jeffrey for years, going all the way back to Missouri. I mean, this is long before Ohio, long before the barn. This was not just a random meeting. So Dennis and his family didn't just show up one day. They had followed Jeff across states because they believed he was a prophet. But that devotion was never returned. So from the very beginning, Dennis and his family, they were different. They stood apart. And if you were different in Jeffrey's world, different meant you were dangerous. I'm Reagan Roy, and trust me, this gets worse. So Jeff's oldest son, Damon, he would later say that his dad despised Dennis Avery. I mean, hated him from the jump. He thought he was a bad dad, a bad husband, a bad provider, and others inside the group noticed this as well. But still, Dennis stayed around. So Dennis was a married father of 3 girls. He eventually uproots his family, drives them to Kirtland, following the same man that he had known and admired since their days in Missouri. But Jeff's irritation turned into reluctant acceptance only after Dennis hands over his car and $10,000 in cash. But the resentment never left. So as life on the farm continues, Jeff's sermons start to shift a little bit. They go from salvation to sacrifice. He starts preaching about blood atonement. That's a belief that some sins could only be cleansed through death. So the group is then told that they would leave society completely, everything they had known, retreat into the wilderness, and just be cut off from the outside world. Okay, by early 1989, Jeff's rage sharpened against the church, against society, and finally against Dennis Avery and his family. So he decided that the Avery family would never be up to God's standards. They were unworthy, and they had to die. So on April 17th, 1989, Jeff invited the Averys over for dinner, but they had no idea that this was a trap. According to law enforcement records, several men then ambushed Dennis. He was beaten, bound, gagged, and dragged into this isolated barn. Jeffrey Lundgren then shot Dennis Avery 3 times. Afterward, Jeff brought his 18-year-old son, Damon, in and forced him to look at the body. Damon was ordered to stand watch, one by one, as the rest of the family was led into the barn. First Cheryl, then 15-year-old Trina, 13-year-old Becky, and 7-year-old Karen. And none of them knew what waited inside. So the next morning, federal agents swarmed the area. They swarmed the barn, the farm, 60 FBI agents, 6 local police officers, because authorities had initially believed that the group was planning to overthrow the Kirtland Temple. No one knew 5 bodies were buried beneath the barn. The group said nothing, no arrests were made, and after the agents left, the group just vanishes. Jeff was controlling everything, even how people drank their water. Then came the women. Jeff took a new wife named Kathy, who was married to his most devoted follower, Keith Johnson. Jeff demanded total submission. He ordered men to give them access to their spouses. And when Jeff began the affair with Kathy, the group finally splintered. Keith was betrayed, devastated, and quite frankly, furious. So he decides to go to police. On New Year's Eve, 1989, Keith Johnson finally decides he's had enough. He breaks his silence, and authorities find the bodies of the Avery family buried beneath the barn. This kicks off a nationwide manhunt. Arrests were made, followed by trials that shocked the country. During his trial, Jeffrey Lundgren showed absolutely no remorse. He said that he had pleased God by doing what he had done. Obviously, prosecutors strongly disagreed. Damon Lundgren got 120 years to life in prison. Danny Kraft was sentenced to 50 years to life. And then there was Jeff's cousin, Debbie Olivares. She was the only cult member who cooperated fully and the only one who testified in every single trial that went to court. She was originally expected to serve about 5 years. Instead, she served more than 21. Jeffrey Lundgren was sentenced to death, and on October 24th, 2006, he was executed by lethal injection. In total, 13 cult members went to prison. In the end, Jeffrey Lundgren promised heaven, but only delivered despair. This was not faith. This was absolute total control. And once obedience replaces conscience, then the cost is unthinkable. So the prophet of Kirtland did not lead his followers to salvation, but instead, he led them to ruin. Don't miss Bloodline and Blind Faith, Untold Stories from the Kirtland Cult Killings, premiering January 16th, featuring exclusive jailhouse interviews with Jeffrey Lundgren's son and his most loyal follower. Follow the link on your screen to learn how to watch. I'm Reagan Roy. We'll see you next time.